Critical Thinking Rule 17, Build Your Internet Savvy. Here are some examples of websites that often have reliable information. Government websites that provide data and statistics. These are often used by researchers, and they tend to be unbiased. Academic research databases. This is like EBSCO or ProQuest or JSTOR. Now, not every single source that's going to be in these databases is informed or impartial, but the majority are. Peer-reviewed journals. Peer review means that other scientists or experts examine an article before it's published. This, of course, does not guarantee the accuracy or impartiality of everything published in the journal, but it does give a helpful check on the information. Some journals are available for free online, or you might be able to get access by first logging in to your college or university library. There are also other peer-reviewed academic websites, such as encyclopedias. In the discipline of philosophy, we have both the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Each article is written by a professional philosopher and also peer-reviewed. This trend of open access peer-reviewed journals and websites is starting to spread to other disciplines as well. And then finally, you can look at news media with care. Now, many news organizations have bias of some kind. However, keep in mind that it's overly simplistic to say you can't trust anything on the news because it's all biased. First of all, there are degrees of bias in different news websites and news organizations. Secondly, in addition to trying to rely upon the name of a general news outlet, you can also track individual reporters to see if they tend to report things accurately and in an unbiased fashion. So if you use the mainstream news with care, it can still be a helpful, reliable source. And by mainstream here, I'm just trying to rule out websites that have news but are very biased in one way or another. There's some where almost all the content is going to be biased, and there's others that are more in the middle, even if they lean left to right or in other directions. So some tips for finding reliable sources. You can use the websites of your college or university library. You can also use freely available academic databases such as Google Scholar. Google Scholar will also turn up patent searches and a wide variety of types of scholarship. But this is something you can use even after you graduate from a college or university and may not have access to the academic databases available through their library. And then finally, there's the public universal library database, WorldCat. So this is something that librarians or anyone can use to just find information about books, articles, all kinds of stuff. The only thing is that you won't have access to a lot of that information unless it's available for free online or unless you have credentials through your college library. So let's talk about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is often maligned as an unreliable source of information. Let's test Wikipedia using the rules from Chapter 4. Rule 13, does Wikipedia cite its sources? The answer is generally yes. So even though Wikipedia is crowdsourced, meaning in theory anyone can edit Wikipedia pages, there are lots of rules that govern how it operates, and most pages have a community of people dedicating to making sure the page is not vandalized and contains correct information. And part of this is rules for citing factual claims. So it usually does a pretty good job of this. Let's look at Rule 14. Is Wikipedia an informed source generally? The answer is yes. Most of the claims made are accurate. You can even find really technical information, such as in mathematics or science or medicine. And so if you look at the degree of information you can find there, it's often comparable to what you would find in a textbook in the discipline that you're looking at. However, is Wikipedia impartial or unbiased? I would say the answer is mostly yes, but with a qualification. So the reason why Wikipedia can be relatively impartial is because you have editors of opposing biases working on the same page. And so if there is a tendency of one editor to push things in a certain direction, other editors with imposing biases will push back. And so you have a kind of equilibrium on most pages, which is relatively unbiased. The main problem here actually comes with the different criterion. That's not one of our rules from chapter 4. And it's not directly related to the idea of impartiality, but because of the opposing biases of Wikipedia editors, sometimes the information on a Wikipedia page is a little bit choppy or disorganized because particular claims can be combined on the same page that reflect different perspectives on an issue. And so it's different than what you would have gotten if there were a single author or a single editor looking over the entire page. Nevertheless, if you can get past the sometimes choppy or seemingly incoherent or from multiple perspectives aspect of the pages, they're still relatively impartial or unbiased. What about Rule 16? Is there cross-checking of independent sources? Once again, I would say generally yes. So if you look at most Wikipedia pages, they have a variety of independent sources that are cited in the footnotes at the bottom. So that's generally pretty good. So if Wikipedia passes all these tests, why is Wikipedia so unpopular, especially among professors? Well, I think there could be some bias and prejudice here because it's not a peer-reviewed source and it's crowdsourced, which makes you think, well, anyone can edit it, it must be garbage. But because of the rules that govern Wikipedia, the way it's set up, it's actually a pretty good source. Nevertheless, there is still a valid reason why myself and other professors don't always look kindly to citing Wikipedia alone as a source when you're looking at a paper or a research project. And this is because even though Wikipedia, in my view, is a good place to start learning information about a given issue, what we generally want our students to do is to go directly to primary sources, to read, understand, and interpret them and analyze and evaluate them yourself. That's a big part of assigning a research project or assignment. And so, in my view, it's okay if you start researching on Wikipedia, but you have to take the next step. Go to the sources that it cites and also find additional sources on your own and create your own analysis and evaluation of the information. That's really what you're required to do in a college-level research project. Here are some general tips for checking internet sources and stories to see if they're informed, impartial, etc. First, you can double check a story that you're not sure of by doing a Google or a Google News search. Is the same story being reported on in the same way by other sources that you know are reliable? So this can often be an issue when you're looking at stories that are shared on social media or Reddit or a variety of different sources that may not be reliable. You can cross-check just by doing a Google or other internet search. Secondly, if a story is shared with an image or images, you can do a reverse image search through Google Images. If you click on the camera icon, you can upload or link to a picture, and then it'll give you a search of other websites that have that picture. This is helpful because oftentimes fake news has real pictures that are paired with a false story. So it could be taking an old picture out of context and claiming it's representing something different. Thirdly, look at the comments thread on an original post on a social media such as Facebook or Instagram. Someone else may have already fact-checked the story and linked to something that exposes it as fake or bogus news. And so someone may have already done the work for you. Fourthly, you can go to fact-check websites that have independent investigations of stories. This is a great resource. I would say the only limitation is that it can sometimes take a few days or a week or longer for the websites to pick up new fake news that's being posted on the internet, because the internet is basically a constant wave or gush of baloney and fake news. And so these websites sometimes take a couple of days to catch up. So if they haven't yet covered a new fake news story, you may have to use tips 1 to 3 first. So let's talk about those fact check websites for a second. Some of the most common and useful ones are listed here: factcheck.org, politifact.com, quackwatch.com, and snopes.com. PolitiFacts.com specializes in political news stories. QuackWatch.com specializes in health and medical claims. Snopes.com originally started as an urban legends reference page where they would just provide summaries and evaluations of urban legends. They also cover various types of fake news and internet memes as well. So these are helpful resources for searching for a story to see if it's already been fact-checked by people who are professional fact-checkers. There's also another website called Real Clear Politics Fact Check Review, which fact checks the fact checkers. So in other words, it gives a review of these different fact check websites and basically evaluates them on how accurate and impartial they are. Next up, some practice problems for Chapter 4. We'll go through some worked examples of how to evaluate an argument's use of sources.